Hi, I'm Kylie Spain, and I'm here with Justin Cusson and John Granato, a Watervliet resident, and we're here to ask them questions about living in Watervliet in the early 1900s. Okay. Do you remember what a gallon of gas costed in 1920?
Gas? A gallon of gas? Well, you could buy 12 gallons of gas for $1, so you figure it out for yourself. Very cheap. It wasn't like 90 cents, 85 cents a gallon of gas. And they used to sell it like 10 or 12 gallons for $1.
Do you remember how much a loaf of bread costed?
Well, we used to have Italian bread mostly, and we didn't use any of the Irish bread, American bread. We had delivery of Italian bread. The bread was about 10 cents a loaf, but they were good sized loaves.
Do you remember how much a cup of coffee was?
I drank tea. Well, I don't know. We never went out to eat like that, to buy coffee. So probably you could get it in any of the restaurants for 5 or 10 cents because coffee was cheap then. Well, everything was that was expensive then. Way back then, it's not like 10 cents now. 10 cents then was a lot of money. Yeah, so it probably put 10 cents for a cup of coffee. But then you could get all you want. You could get 2 cups or 3 cups, as long as you kept drinking, which you do today too. Yeah.
Do you remember how much a movie ticket was?
Well, the movie tickets were depends on what movie you went to. Now, we had 2 movies in Watervliet. We had one right here on the corner, Grand Theater, and we had one down a ways was called the San Susie's. And we never paid more than 10 cents to go into the movies, at the most. And that was a lot. Sometimes the price would be a nickel, and sometimes 10 cents. And there used to be a guy by the name of Big Bade. He was an undertaker, and he lived on Broadway. And what he used to do, he used to come to the theater here, and he used to gather all the kids, and he'd say, "Walk in, I'm paying for everybody." The guy in the little box didn't know how many were going in anyway, so he'd hit him like $1, $1.50, and we all got in. And most of the time, we never really paid for the movies. We always got in free. This guy was always there to get the kids in, keep them off the street. It was well nice of him.
Do you know how much minimum wage was?
How much what was?
Minimum wage.
General wage?
Minimum wage.
Minimum wage? No, I see. I wasn't working. I was in school way back then. So what we worked, little odd jobs, they'd hand you 10 cents or a quarter or something like that. But they didn't have those minimum wages and things like that way back. You got somebody would pay you for what you did, and it didn't come out to $1 an hour or 50 cents an hour. Whatever the guy thought you deserved, he just handed it to you. Like if you had somebody cut your grass for you, you'd hand them $1 or some 50 cents. 50 cents and $1 way back then was a lot of money.
So we heard that you worked on a farm as a kid. Do you remember what you used to make daily?
When I worked on the farm, well, I used to make like $1 a day when I worked all day. And then I made, when I got to be able to do the things a little faster, I was making $1.25 a day. Now, when you went up to $1.50 a day, you were making a lot of money at that time. So we never got the $2. We got the $1.75 a day, but never up to $2. And to us, that was a lot of money because the farmer used to pick us up in the morning at 19th Street and 6th Avenue, because the whole bunch of us, kids, we'd be waiting to go to work, and he'd pick us up and drive us to the place where we worked, and then we worked all day, and then he would drive us back. So it didn't cost us nothing to get up and back to work. But as far as how much you made, it depended on how good you worked and how well the job was done. That's how it depended, whether you made $1, $1.25, $1.50 an hour.
Your father threw mobster Legs Diamond out of a bar. Can you tell us about that?
Well, my friend, my dad's friend was running a grill here on 3rd Avenue between 24th Street and 25th Street, and he was short a bartender, and he asked my father if he would give him a hand. So my father went, and of course all they were doing was tapping beer and giving you a glass of beer. That's all they were drinking. So yeah, he was in there. So Jack Lake's Diamond came in. Now, do you know who Diamonds was? Okay, as long as you know who he was, so I don't have to explain that he was a gangster. And he came in, and he said to my father, he says, what kind of beer are you handling here? My father said, I don't know. Which he didn't, because he only worked there. He says, you have to talk to the owner. Where is he? He's in the back there someplace. So he starts getting rough. The guy, Diamonds start to get rough. So my father says, you're going to, then he told my father, starting tomorrow morning, you're going to start getting so many barrels of beer here, our beer. My father says, you could bring them. That doesn't say we're going to use them. And my father went back and forth. They were arguing. So he says, don't tell me what to do. He says, we're going to give you the beer and you're going to get it in the morning. Okay. My father came around the bar, picked him up, opened the door, and threw him out the road. And he says, don't come back here again. He says, or I'll really give you a beating. And he never came back. And that was Jack Lake's Diamond, the big gangster, you know. So he met somebody that wasn't afraid of him. Because everybody, when you mention Lake's Diamond, oh, be careful, he's a gangster. But they were just crooks, that's all they were. They were no gangsters, they were crooks. But my father threw him out the grill.
Will you tell us the story of the West Side Foundry burning down?
The West Side Foundry was right over here where this little marketplace is here. And I used to deliver papers. I'd start where the Watervliet Bank is and where the foot of the bridge. And there was the Times Union, the Troy Record office was there. My brother was in charge. And we used to pick our papers up there, and then we'd start our routes. Everybody had different routes in the city. So my route was Green Island. So I got my 18, I think I had 18 papers to deliver, which was a lot of papers at that time. So I'd go in and I'd go to walk to Green Island and all the way around to Green Island to deliver all my papers. And on my way back, I'd stop in the West Side Foundry where my father worked. And he'd be waiting for me to make sure I got there. So, okay, so we were in there, and his grandfather was a boss there, like my father. The two of them ran the place. So his father was working on what they called a cubulo. It was a big round thing, almost as big as this, where they melted the iron, and all that red hot iron you see come out. Well, that's what his grandfather used to do. Let it out. Well, all of a sudden they heard this noise in this thing, like it was blowing up, getting ready to blow up. So everybody started to run, and Charlie's grandfather jumped over the melted iron. He had no choice. He just lucky if he ever jumped on that thing, he wouldn't have any legs. But he jumped over, and my father picked me up. I was only a kid, like that. And out we went. Next thing you know, the whole place is on fire. And that thing blew up. That was the end of the factory. Right in front of us. Just blew right up in front of us. But fortunately, nobody got hurt.
You were the last class to graduate from the old high school in the Civic Center. What was the old school like?
The old school? The old school was just a building with rooms in it. It wasn't meant to be a school. It was meant to be a city hall. That's what it was, part of the city hall. But they had no schools, so we had to get someplace where we could sit down and the teacher could teach us something. So the building was where where the city hall was. There used to be a building there, and that was the high school. And we walked from here, a bunch of us, we'd walk to school every day. And it didn't bother us, that we were in there or in a beautiful building. I mean, we just went to school. But we were the last class to graduate from the high school, the old high school. And that was considered the old high school, because the new high school, naturally, was up on the hill. And so we had we had a nice time that day. We all got together, and we had a good time, because it was our last day. Like any school.
What businesses, landmarks that existed that are gone now?
I didn't get the question.
What are some businesses or landmarks that existed then are now gone?
Oh, what businesses were around that are not around here anymore? Well, all the factories that were out around here have all disappeared. Now, on the corner here used to be the Brotherhood Park, right? You know where the park is here? The park. Across the street was another park, just like the Brotherhood Park. But then they put a building there, and they used to make men's clothing. Then after they left, they went out of business there. They had the toothbrush factory come in, and they used to make the brushes and the toothbrushes and all that stuff. They went out, and first thing you know, the whole police went out because there wasn't enough business for them and to handle that. But those were some of the buildings that were close by that went out of business. Then the sandpaper place up here, Bear Manning, they consolidated and made it Manning. And then you had the Kubalo factory. The Kubalo factory right up the street was another place like the West Side Foundry, only they called it the Kubalo. They made different iron things out of there. Some of the things, like my father, there's a picture of a picture. There's a statue of a girl out there, and which my father made from a mold from the old West Side Foundry. So they made a lot of good things if they had to.
We heard you worked in the arsenal. Can you tell us about that?
I work in the arsenal? Well, I worked in the arsenal. I took a test. There was some tests that were available at the time. And I took the test, I passed the test, I got a good mark on the test. So they called me immediately and asked me if I'd like to work at the arsenal. So at that time, I was working at Monkey Warts. I had a good job in Monkey Warts. So I figured maybe this was a better chance to advance. So I took the job. I went to work. And the first thing you know, they had me in charge of this, then of that. Then I ended up in charge of payroll, time and attendance. I took care of their retirement money, and then they had a whole other bunch of things. And they were throwing everything to me in the office, and I ended up with one great big office with all these different small offices in. And then then they wanted me to take care of the military. Because, see, at that time, the Arsenal had quite a few military personnel. So I used to take care of them. So finally, they made it so that any soldiers that were in town that needed money, they'd come to the Arsenal and see me, and I'd ask questions, and if I thought they deserved money, if not, I'd call their outfit and see if money was all right to grant them, and they would always say yes. So I kept paying all these young fellas that were coming in looking for money, and I gave them money, and then everybody was happy. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I understand you were in the Air Force for 4 years. Can you tell us about your experience?
Can I tell you about what?
The experience you had?
The experience I had in the... Well, I was in charge of a whole squadron. It was about 75 to 125 fellas. And I was in charge. We had our own barracks. We all lived in the same barrack, and I gave orders what had to be done. Certain days you had to wash the floors. Other days you had to dust all over the place. Every day you had something to do, and you had to keep the place clean like a house. And I was pretty strict about everything had to be just so. I mean, if there's any spots or any dirty, they had to do it over again, and they knew that. So when they did their job, they did it well. But so in the meantime, of all the stuff that I was doing, I was also a musician. I was a singer, and I was a bass fiddle player. I played in the Albany Symphony. I played in the Schenectady Symphony. I love my symphony playing. And I had my own dance group, which was about 8 guys or 9 guys, and we used to play all the dances all over. And I would sing all over, and then I sang in all the churches. I got to be quite a singer. I don't know if you ever heard me sing or not. You want me to hear me sing? No. No, but no, I sang in all the churches. What church do you go to now?
I used to go to St. Patrick's, but that was kind of...
Yeah, I know you don't go there now. I used to go to Mount Carmel, and I don't go there now. I go to St. Anthony in Troy. So that's where I go to church at the 11 o'clock Mass, the 9 o'clock Mass. Yeah, we went around to these little cities. They were little towns. They had no big cities way down there. And we used to play, and then I'd entertain. We got the band there and the play, and they used to really have a good time. The people, because they had never heard the music like that. And we have a nice dance band and play, and they'd be dancing in the street. You know, it was a good experience. We made a lot of people happy, and down there, though, there was evidently the schools didn't have any orchestras or any bands for some reason or other. So when we got there and we started playing for them, and they heard what we did, they wanted to start their own bands in the school, so they started. So we made a lot of friends, and we made a lot of people happy. Oh, I was happy myself.
Do you remember where you were when President Kennedy was shot?
When President Kennedy was shot, I was in the office at the Arsenal. And some guy came in saying the president was shot. Come to find out, he was dead. They had killed him. And immediately they sent everybody home. Closed up the place for the day. Say, get out. You got to find out what's what. So the arsenal closed for the day, and we all went home. But then we were back to work the next day to find out what we had to do. What could we do? We couldn't do anything. The president was dead.
Can you tell us about the Erie Canal?
The Erie Canal. The Erie Canal was right along the streets here. And it just went right down, and it emptied into the river. And the boats used to come, the barges used to come right down where 23rd Street is right now. And we could, sometimes we'd hop on a barge. We got a little ride because we know it only went down a half a block and it'd stop. And we had a lot of fun on the barge. And, but there was always boats going up and down the Erie Canal. And they used to go up, and you go up to Saratoga, up all the way down, and go out west. That was the route. That's the only route that the boats could take, was through the canal. The canal was quite a thing in its day. There's a lot of merchandise came up through the city here, and up and around, and up through and around. It couldn't go up higher because he had the hills. So right where Bear Manning, it went around and down where the high school is, and it went down that way.
Can you tell us about the Hindenburg?
The Hindenburg flew overhead, and it was right over the house here. And everybody was out looking at it. You know, it was a real big thing. Nobody ever saw one before. And we're all looking, and we spent, and it practically stopped here. You know, but just kept the motors going, and they were going to give people a chance to look at it. But what they were doing was really spying and taking pictures. See, it was a German balloon. The Zeppelin was German, and they were taking pictures of the arsenal and all these different foundries to see what we were doing, because they had intended to invade the Americas, and that was the whole problem. And that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to get all pictures of where the factories were and what the area was like. Because if they were going to invade, they knew what the territory was. So that's what it was.
Can you tell us about bootleggers?
About what?
Bootleggers?
Bootleggers? Yeah. What do you want to know about bootleggers for? Are you going to be a bootlegger? Well, at that time, there were bootleggers all over. Everybody made their own booze. In other words, they made their own liquor. I used to work for Lanzillo Bakery in Troy. I was only a kid, like you. And I used to deliver the bread to the people. And hold this a second there. And he'd say, the baker would say, hold out your arms, John. Okay. I'd hold them out like this, and he'd put 4 loaves of bread down. And on top of the bread, he'd put a can, and that was full of alcohol. Put that on top. Then he put 4 more loaves of bread on top. Now he says, go in that place there and just knock at the door. So I'd go to the place and knock at the door. I didn't know what to say or what to do. I didn't have to say anything. The guy knew just what. He says, forget the bread. He's looking for the alcohol. Where's the alcohol? I said, I don't know what you're talking about, you know, which I didn't. So he took the bread out, then he'd get the can, and then he'd take the bread, then you'd go. Then you do it to the next house, and the house after that. That's all you did. You delivered. I was actually a bootlegger, and I didn't even know it. But we were kids. We got 10 cents for doing it, and that's what we did. We were bootleggers. But everybody made their own liquor. It isn't like now you go to all these liquor stores and buy whatever you want. At that time, you had to make your own liquor up, and that's what we did.
You mentioned that you were in a band. Did you used to play at proms?
Did I used to play at proms? Oh yeah. I played Lynn's prom there, and I played all the Watervliet High School proms. I played all their dances, and also in Troy, I did some of Troy and Cohoes because some of them didn't have bands, so we played for everybody. Yeah, I played an awful lot of school proms. Yeah. Well, half of the times I was playing, I should have been dancing because it was my class, but I was playing.
Can you tell us how you had to pay to go over the Green Island Bridge?
Oh, you had to pay to go to Green Island Bridge? The bridge was right at the end of the Broadway here. Now, if you wanted to go to Green Island, there was a guy in a booth there on the bridge. You had to pay him 2 cents to get over the bridge to go into Green Island. If you didn't have the 2 cents, you didn't go across the bridge. So what we used to do, we'd get in the middle of the street, and when somebody was at the counter paying him, we would run, and he couldn't catch us. So we got to Green Island. So when we got to Troy, we had the same problem in Troy. In order to get from Troy to Green Island, you had to pay 2 cents again to come back. And we used to do the same thing over there. We used to run like crazy. The guys could never catch us. But that's what it was. There was the city didn't own. These guys would own the bridges, and they were trying to get the money out of the people for going across. And the cars used to charge 10 cents. If you had a car, you had to pay 10 cents. So but the bridges, you couldn't go to a bridge for nothing. You had to pay to go and to come back.
What differences do you see in kids today than when you were a kid?
Well, I think today the kids don't play together like they used to when we were kids, because we had nothing else to do. So what we would do, we'd always get together and we'd always be in the Brotherhood Park playing baseball, football, or baseball, or whatever it was. But we were always in the park. We were never out of the park. We were always right close to home, because when my mother or my father wanted us to be home, they'd whistle. Everybody had their own whistle. When you heard that whistle, that meant you had to go home. So you went home. But there wasn't anything to do. You don't have like the facilities you have today where you go play basketball and things like that. There was none of that stuff at all. No, naturally, you didn't have no TV. You're lucky if you had a radio in the house. That was it. But there was no news on anyway. It didn't make much difference, not like it is today. Every 2 seconds, the television's saying, listen to this or listen to that, something special. Not back then, it wasn't like that. But we used to have a lot of sports. We had some good sports. My brother was the fastest runner in the 100-yard dash, and his name went down in history in a Watervliet High School book as the fastest runner for the 100-yard dash. You couldn't catch him. Once he started running, look out. He was like lightning. And I had a lot of opportunities. I had offers to go to different colleges to play football. Not that I was a good football player, but I was a tremendous kicker. I could kick the ball 60, 70 yards, which, guys couldn't do. And I had all kind of offers to go to all these different colleges just to play football. which I didn't want to leave home. So, but that's about. That's my sport was football. I loved football. I just loved it. Rough, but that's what I like. Rough games.
In closing.
Is there anything you would like to say in closing?
Well, Watervliet was always a nice little town. It's still a nice little town. It's the people in it that make the town. Now, if you got bad kids, you're going to have bad town. And if you got good kids, they come from good parents who watch over them. So when you grow up, remember to be a good parent, because it's important that you raise good kids. So we were fortunate. We were 9 in the family, but we were all good kids. And if we weren't good kids, my father was there with the hand, look out. And he didn't fool around. he let you have it. So we never had any problems.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share those memories with us.
It's been a pleasure having you here, and I enjoyed talking to you very much. It was very educational. I hope that you can spread this around to other little kids to let them hear how Watervliet was such a nice place at one time.
Thank you.